our city's systems failed Timothy Green. On that day, Timothy Green should have received help. Instead, he was murdered by the police.
The killing of Timothy Green, a Black man in a mental health crisis, is an appalling reminder of the stranglehold that police hold over Olympia. I also demand that the council obtain and release the specific officer, the name, who killed Timothy Green.
We're asking you to share your condolences with his family and speak down to the lies that are being told by officers.
With full acknowledgement of the humanity of the person who killed Timothy Green and all law enforcement. That person did exactly what the institution of policing was created to do: protect businesses, control social behavior, and maintain peace through violence.
I had a friend reaching out nervously today because he is a African-American man who has a bit of a twitch. He moves suddenly, and he sometimes gets all steamed up as he moves through town. And he's afraid that he'll be killed for his behavior.
I myself, along with I think a lot of others, don't really know the specifics of what happened that day. Whatever did happen that day, it doesn't really justify, it will never justify what the result was. I don't have any good answers.
All officers are not bad, and I know this. But the ones that is not for humanity of safetyness, I'm asking any of them to step down for the safety of our community. I knew he had a mental illness. I knew he had a violent part about him when he was off his meds.
You know, in this position, it is difficult to speak to things that you don't have all of the facts to. And so elected officials often find themselves in trouble when they open their mouths about things that they don't have all of the facts and correct information. So you haven't seen me say very much about this, and that is on purpose. We do have to let this investigation play out.
Unfortunately, we have to let this investigation go through.
The people will not unquestionably accept the findings of this investigation, and neither should you.
Relevant, important, convenient. This is ONN.
We are on to public comment. Darek Ball.
To me, it is obvious that Timothy Green's death falls at an intersection of years of political inaction and failure by the city. Its failed housing policy, lack of police reform, and its failure to offer adequate mental health services to our most vulnerable neighbors, all of which, had they been addressed adequately by City Council and City Manager Jay Burney, Timothy Green might still be alive today. But we'll start with the most obvious of these failures: City Hall's refusal to address the many police reforms that the community has been calling for over a decade. We have demanded citizen oversight of the police and the ability of citizens, not cop buddies in neighboring police departments, to investigate police violence and police misconduct. And yet, merely a day after Timothy Green's murder, this very council told us that their hands were tied because they must follow state law. This just isn't true. The state law only sets the minimum requirements that the city council, but the city council has the ability to go beyond these state requirements and create true citizen oversight of the police, but it won't. We were promised that OPD would have body cams. It has been over 2 years since the George Floyd uprisings when we were promised this, and not one single body cam has been placed on a single officer. And now it's too damn late. It's too late because we didn't have them when we needed them most. The one achievement that I can point to that was the creation of this crisis response team, yet on August 22nd, crew was never dispatched, even though the situation that occurred was exactly what crew was intended to prevent. When a vulnerable community member was experiencing a mental health crisis, our city's systems failed Timothy Green. On that day, Timothy Green should have received help. Instead, he was murdered by the police. We need not only an explanation from leadership on why our systems keep failing our Black and vulnerable community members over and over, A true independent investigation,
Thank
not
you.
cops investigating cops, and a
Thank you.
proposal about how this leadership will make sure that these systems don't.
We've run out of time, but I do want to appreciate the commenters. Next, I have Alice Rosewater, followed by Talauna Reed.
First of all, I want to draw attention to the great abyss between the council's statements regarding the destigmatization of mental health and the complete lack of action on addressing the epidemic of police violence against people with mental illnesses, who make up over 25% of police killings. Black people in mental health crises in particular, like Timothy Green, are targeted by this violence. The killing of Timothy Green, a Black man in a mental health crisis, is an appalling reminder of the stranglehold that police hold over Olympia, and an indictment of the council's budget priorities. Bleeding our communities dry and creating the miserable conditions which supposedly justify police violence, a self-justifying charade. I demand that the Capital Metro Independent Investigation Team be disbanded immediately and replaced with a truly independent investigation not involving law enforcement of any kind, such as the Office of Independent Investigations, which should have been up and running by July 1st. And like the previous commenter said, the council has every authority to institute above the bare minimum. The council should avoid passing the blame onto another legislative body, instead get down to business and do their jobs. The consequences of not doing so are a miscarriage of justice, another one. Lastly, I also demand that the council obtain and release the specific officer, the name, who killed Timothy Green. Thank you.
Next, I have Talauna Reed, followed by Sarah DeStasio.
Good evening, Council. I have the pleasure of standing with Timothy Green's mother right now. I didn't know she'd be here. I guess what I want to start by saying is that Timothy Green left behind a beautiful family. I had the opportunity to spend some time with his grieving family, and I just wanted to amplify some of the things they shared with the community. His mother said that anytime a man or woman puts on a uniform and they're called to the aid of somebody, they must act with integrity or they need to stand down. His sister shared something so simple to the community, and she said, we have to do better so we can be better. It's that simple in this case. In this case, officers were tweeting right after the incident or during the incident that officers were treated for injuries at the scene. That's a lie. And what we expect from this council is to address those things. We're not asking you to speak to the case or the facts or the merits of the case. We're asking you to speak to the public. We're asking you to share your condolences with his family and speak down to the lies that are being told by officers, especially when they say them publicly. That's all I have to share tonight.
Thank you. To Sarah DeStasio.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to follow Talauna and the family of Timothy Green. This is also regarding his killing. Thank you for the 2 appointees from the Use of Force Board who will shadow the investigation of Tim's death. That's a good thing. But those 2 citizen representatives will not ensure that the possibility for conflicts of interest and bias that are always present when police investigate police, even in another city, is not present. The legislature acknowledged the importance of truly impartial review when they created the Office of Independent Investigation in 2021, which, as you know, will eventually be fed all deadly use of force cases. And, as you also know, won't be fully operational until the summer or beyond. And that's why the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability is so concerned that investigations like this one will not be truly impartial or credible. The people will not unquestionably accept the findings of this investigation, and neither should you. With full acknowledgement of the humanity of the person who killed Timothy Green and all law enforcement, That person did exactly what the institution of policing was created to do: protect businesses, control social behavior, and maintain peace through violence. No amount of impartial investigation will prevent that violence from happening. Rest in power, Tim Green.
Thank you. That concludes public comment this evening. Any comments from council about Mayor Pro Tem, followed by Councilmember Payne?
First, I want to offer my condolences and to say that I know Tim's smile from the sidewalk because he was a person who was around downtown and on the buses, and so I feel that smile. And I had a friend reaching out nervously today because he is a African-American man who has a bit of a twitch. He moves suddenly, and he sometimes gets all steamed up as he moves through town, and he's afraid that he'll be killed for his behavior, right? And it's a legitimate concern. And so I would ask that while we respect this investigation has to happen before we figure out justice for the loss of Timothy Green, that we can respond as an emergency to try to make it right now safer for a person who's having a mental health crisis and also looks dangerous to law enforcement, to be held safe. It seems like policies, programs, and staffing choices could be made that have nothing to do with respecting this investigation. So I would just urge that we elevate our actions, because I think that's the most meaningful way that we can honor Mr. Green's life and this tragedy that's happened.
Thank you. Councilmember Payne.
Ms. Green, excuse me, Mrs. Green, thank you for being here tonight. I know I don't have the words that's going to change anything for you or the feelings that you have. But I want you to know that this is deeply personal to me. I share your skin. I share his skin. I don't, in this position, it is difficult to speak to things that you don't have all of the facts to. And so elected officials often find themselves in trouble when they open their mouths about things that they don't have all of the facts and correct information. So you haven't seen me say very much about this, and that is on purpose. We do have to let this investigation play out. I think that there is some merit to all of the criticism about neighboring jurisdictions investigating the Olympia Police Department. I myself have had experiences with the State Patrol in a personal matter where they investigated one of their own, and that situation did not turn out in my favor. So I have personal experience with knowing that, in fact, officers investigating other officers does tend to lean in favor of the police. And there is something that we can do about that. However, civilian oversight is very difficult for the reasons that conducting investigations is a profession. It takes professional expertise to do that. And law enforcement officers, a lot of the times, there's almost like a monopoly on that. There are civilian investigators, but not on the scale that it is conducted by folks in uniform. And so what we're really talking about here is the lack of that entire infrastructure of civilian investigators, and we're going to need it. So that's something to that we can ask the state to look into and consider. We also know that civilian oversight is needed. This body has talked about it numerous times before, where we have been trying to move at a decent pace. These things do take time to have a civilian oversight body. We know that it's needed. We've been looking at different models. I can point to an example. Eugene, Oregon has a model that we've explored. There are several other cities that have, everybody's doing this differently. And so this is going to take some time to figure out. And I just want to speak to the public comment about body cameras. Unfortunately, we've had some logistical challenges in the supply chain. They were already supposed to be on our officers, but they will be on them beginning next month in October. I encourage you to get involved, everyone, in the remainder of our Reimagining Public Safety process, which is ongoing. Do not let Timothy Green's death be in vain. I know this can be very taxing work to keep coming back to the city over and over again. But there is a listening session for Black community members specifically next week on September 19th. I don't have all the details on that. Stacey Ray isn't here, but I encourage you. Please email me, or I'm happy to provide that information to you on how you can participate in that process. Mrs. Green, my condolences to you and your family. I did see that your hand is up. It's typically not protocol to call on someone, so I'm not sure how we can do that. But I'm happy to have further conversations with you at a later time if you would like. And thank you for being here tonight.
I will add to that, during public comment, it's not a two-way conversation. It's a business meeting that we accept public comment and we can make responses or ask staff to make responses. I will ask our Assistant City Attorney, just if you could get the date and time and how people can sign up for that next meeting, and I'll report out before the end of the meeting. I don't need it right now, unless you have it right now. Yeah, okay, yeah, if you could just get that for me over the course of the meeting. Great, thank you. Next, I have Councilmember Parsley, followed by Councilmember Huynh.
I know this is out of order. It's not within process, but can we just make an exception? It's his mom. I would love to hear what you have to say.
If you are comfortable coming up to the podium and introducing yourself.
Officers. It's been many officers that I had hugged out in the community. My prayers has always been for the policemen in uniform. I pray for the military people. I had several children that served the military. My husband's retired sub duty, as well as working for the state of safety of DOL. I had always held up the police officer, and I thought in our community that Timothy was safe when I worked with Leslie Cushman in passing out those ballots in the snow, in the rain. And I thought when that legislature went through and it passed, I thought Timothy was safe. I knew he had a mental illness. I knew he had a violent part about him when he was off his meds. But when he wasn't, he was the most loving, kind person, even emptying out my pantry to the homeless people. So now that's starting to get filled up again. So saying all this to say this to you, I didn't have my biggest mistake, because I pray for him being, he's highly for homicide out on the streets with drugs and everything else. I thought I could pray for all of that, and I thought he was safe with the police because the legislator. That felt me. It felt me really bad. All officers are not bad, and I know this. But the ones that it's not for humanity of safetyness, I'm asking any of them to step down for the safety of our community. But my prayers goes for the ones that they have the heart of people. That would never stop with me. And when they talk about, I told my children with Black Lives Matters, I always believed that all life matter. But do our life really matter today? That's all I gotta say.
Thank you very much for having the grace to come up. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mrs. Green. And to quote Dr. Thelma Jackson, all lives matter, but none matter if Black lives don't matter. And I'm not sure I can improve on what Councilmember Payne said. I know there's no magic words I can give you. I can tell you you're in my heart. Your whole family's in my heart. And unfortunately, we have to let this investigation go through. But what I can tell you, in June of 2020, when we put the referral in, and I was one of the authors on it for the Social Justice and Equity Commission, I specifically asked that one of the work plans that they are talking about doing this coming year is community oversight. And I have not forgotten it, and I want the community not to forget it. We need to make this happen. But like Councilmember Payne has said, we need to do it thoughtfully so that there can be trust and real transparency, because until we get that, we're not going to get the trust. And I'm not sure I can add much more except for I'm sorry.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Nguyen, for nudging graciously. I thank you. And I think we are going to move on to the rest of the business meeting, but your family are in our thoughts. And oh, I'm so sorry, Councilmember Nguyen.
It's okay. I'll try to keep it brief. You just changed the whole mood, you being in here tonight. I don't know how you got here, how you managed to, given the circumstances, but your presence is very impactful. I myself, along with I think a lot of others, don't really know the specifics of what happened that day. Whatever did happen that day, it doesn't really justify it. It will never justify what the result was. I don't have any good answers. While listening to the folks that came here for Timothy talk about, where's body cameras? Where's this? Where's the name of the officer? It does tell me on a more sort of technical process side that a lot of the efforts that we are doing, a lot of the things simply like the officer's name was released, we need to make sure those messages actually get out to people.
Continue, Councilman Nguyen. She's correct.
Oh, and then so I'm listening and I'm going through and thinking about all of the different information that that I would hope we can clarify as well. Yes, I know we need to let this investigation carry out, but also I will be asking from tonight on, what more can we do? I'm not an expert when these things happen. I would like to think that we can do, there is more that we can do, and to at least explore those things in addition to, so hopefully that doesn't give our attorney a heartburn, but you didn't come here for nothing, and I will do my part to try to figure out what more we can do. And so I think in these times, you just listen to people and just kind of say thank you and don't say much, because I don't have a solution right now. But thank you for being here, everyone, especially you.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby, and I want to echo that too. Your voice is an important piece of this conversation. I don't know what happened. And one of my biggest frustrations is that there's not an automatic channel for the governing body to see what the investigating team sees in real time as it happens. I would also be interested in what more we can do. In fact, I'd like to request an executive session or a memo from our attorney outlining where the law lies in this investigation as far as what the city's power would be to do more. You know, a city the size of ours could and should consider its own independent investigation in parallel or in response. I don't see a reason why not. And I wish that the state program was open too, because that'd sure give us that independence that we've been looking for. The next best thing for me, I think, is our own police auditor. You know, and we have them on retainer. Could they immediately parallel the investigation team?
These are all really good questions that I'd like to refer to staff.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now, I think, is asking for that response from our attorney. And I'm not going to put him on the spot to answer my hypotheticals this evening.
Right.
And I'm not trying to get applause, but to the point of, you know, Councilmember Payne, is we need to do right by a death that happened in our institution. And I pray that the investigation will give us the tools to do that. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you again.
Hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching.